And we're live. Hello, world. It's the
Here we are doing radio, but without a radio.
change of pace.
We're counting on you guys.
Hey, look, we're up on the screen. I'm going to share it to my page.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, everybody. Should we derp around for a little bit and stall until people start showing up?
We can talk. I'm going to find that post that you just shared so I can share it. Hey, look, it's us.
Hey, I'm like way taller than you. How do I make my chair go down?
I had to go down because I keep bumping into the table.
Now you have to turn off your computer.
Oh.
Computer sound.
Okay.
All right, guys.
There's Ainsley. There's some plants. There's me. No product placement.
And if you're wondering why the light is so blown out on our video,
Your crappy lens?
it's because the LG V40 Thin Q makes a lens cover that juts out past the back of the phone. So anytime you set it down on something, it's getting scratched.
Wouldn't it be nice if they made phones with cases that you didn't have to get cases for?
Yeah, so that you didn't always have to be spending more money to have things.
Yeah.
It would also be nice if they made phone cases that were still small enough for you to be able to fit your phone in your pocket. Because I can't.
You don't have pockets. You're a girl.
I know, that was my problem. That was my problem a couple years ago when I was still wearing jeans all the time.
Right.
I don't wear jeans all the time now, so. So I guess it doesn't matter if it fits in my pocket.
So we can imagine an on-air light on. Since
Right.
We're on air.
We're making quality radio in the absence of radio. Our radio station, KBMF
Right.
in Butte, has gone on a hiatus of having real DJs at the station. And so they're playing automated music picked by the music directors for a couple of weeks until it's safe for our 70-something volunteers plus amount and age to start going back into the station again.
Right.
So we're live streaming from home. There's not quite the same pressure as knowing that if we stop talking, the radio will be dead.
Or if I say the wrong word, the FCC could fine us $20,000.
Right, but we've decided we're not going to swear today anyway because we don't want to have to edit it later to put on the radio.
Radio rules. So this show is being recorded live now, and then it will be on our Sunday slot
From 4 to 6.
from 4 to 6 on KBMF 102.5.
For people that listen to the real radios.
Right, the terrestrial source.
Real
yes.
radios. So we have about 10 people listening now. Why don't we tell them who we are and what
Welcome
we're doing here?
Welcome to Post-Orthodoxy. I'm a citizen DJ, Dark City A, not DJing right now.
No, but we really appreciate you guys joining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have fun topics today.
We do.
Super exciting, fun, fun.
I used the word poopy butts.
Poopy butts.
In the hopes of enticing more people to watch, because whether they say they approve of saying poopy butts or not, everybody's intrigued.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
What could you have to say about poopy butts that I haven't heard before?
Probably nothing. But I'm gonna say it again for those people on our live stream.
I was being them.
Oh yes. What are they gonna say about poopy butts?
Yes.
So this is quality radio content.
we can just go through our subjects.
Okay.
Why are people afraid of poopy butts so
AKA
much?
toilet paper hoarding. Okay.
Toilet paper hoarding. What is the economy?
Yeah, do you know? How would you define the Federal Reserve?
What is the Federal Reserve, and how does it work with the economy and monetary policy? I don't know. We're posing questions. I have like what Wikipedia says, and then I have my vast, extensive knowledge of conspiracy theory, which has all kinds of things to say about the Federal Reserve. But we're hearing a lot about the Federal Reserve, their ability to just create $1.5 trillion.
Yes.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means. So maybe we'll explore that a little bit. And if there are people out there who know more about the economy and the Federal Reserve, please, we have room for you to chime in and say things.
Do you feel like the economy affects your actual life, and how?
And yeah, so I'm really,
Yeah.
I went down the rabbit hole with the Federal Reserve, but I just rimmed the rabbit hole. I didn't really penetrate.
Speaking of poopy butts.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of really, I we're doing this subject because for a while I was just kind of like, why did they dump $1.5 million into the stock market? When trillion. Why did they dump $1.5 million into the stock market when people are jobless and foodless and afraid of losing their homes?
How does that work?
I was like, that's not fair. Why don't they give it to the citizens? And then it was brought to my attention that there are a lot of citizens who have invested in the stock market and are planning on retiring on those investments.
Right.
And their neighbors who are really, really worried, and I should be sensitive. So I'm like, fine, I have to learn about...
Well, there's also like, if United Airlines goes bankrupt, all those employees will also be unemployed, whether they've got anything in the stock market or not.
Right, well, we watched Bernie Sanders' town hall about, he did a town hall sometime this last week, which you can see on his Twitch. That's twitch.tv Bernie_Sanders. He keeps about a week's worth of videos up for you to watch after they're live. And he had a woman on there who's the director of basically like the airplane, what are they called now? Flight attendant, not stewardesses.
Flight attendant.
Airline flight attendant union or workers' rights or something. And she was saying, it's not that we don't want people to bail out corporations, it's that those bailout monies should go to support the workers in those corporations, not so that the CEOs can buy back their own stock.
Right. Why are we? It's like the cruise ship issue as well. So the cruise ship wants money, but they're not based in America. They're based in tax havens, is where they base their operations. So they don't have to pay taxes. So they don't have to pay taxes, but they want to use taxpayer money to keep them afloat. And you're a jerk if you don't support that, because think of all those poor employees that are going to lose their jobs.
Right. Well,
So,
I mean, if the bailouts were going to actually fund the employees, I mean, I think we need to talk about trickle-down economics. We need to talk about trickle-down, because I grew up...
People who like scat. That's who scatophilics are.
What does that have to do with our radio show, Evno?
Poopy butts. Scat. Scat is not just a jazz thing. Scat is also scatological, which means of the poop.
Oh, like... Animal poop in the woods is called scat.
Scat, right.
That's right. My dad used to do that so that we weren't saying bad words like poop.
So scatophilics are, I guess,
people
fans,
that love to talk about poop.
or just fans of scat itself.
How interesting. So, what was I talking about?
Dave Hutchins just sent me a message. We were talking about the economy. We need somebody to help. I need somebody to help me understand how the Federal Reserve works.
We've been doing a lot of research, and not as much as we'd like, because we also still have to do like house cleaning and things like that. I was talking about trickle down. I grew up in a household where trickle down is a real thing. Trickle down is something that we all believe in. Trickle down is good. It's important for people at the top to have money so that they can pay the next guy who can pay the next guy who can pay the next guy. And what we're seeing in actuality as the economy crashes because people are out of jobs is that the economy actually needs buyers, not payers. The economy needs buyers more than it needs payers. That trickle down is in fact not actually how things work. That you can save the economy.
It sounded so sexy though.
By enabling people to buy.
For scatophiliacs.
Right. You can save the economy by allowing people to buy things.
Right.
So that stock stays valuable.
Right. Well, that's where we get to talk about, I like to talk about, we've seen the hashtag float around more and more recently, late stage capitalism. Or terminal stage capitalism, as some people are calling now. Which leads me into one of the other topics, which we may or may not get into yet. I wanted to open up the Federal Reserve and the economy because I've been doing some philosophizing and perusing of philosophers of late, current philosophers, public intellectuals, you might call them as well. And I was on a Zoom meeting with like 60 people with this guy who is a professor of sociology named John Vervaeke. And he has a YouTube series. I'm going to put a link to the YouTube series in the comments. He has a YouTube series about the meaning crisis, and that's the position that he's coming from, is that we're suffering from a crisis of meaning, and that leads us into a few topics. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of philosophy just yet. I just want to tell you about the subject so people can think about it.
Well, you know, it's kind of these conversations, as we talk about, go in a lot of different directions all at once. It's kind of hard to talk about new ways of thinking without talking about all the definitions required, all of the different possible new ways of thinking. And so talking about the psycho-emotional crisis that makes people buy tons of toilet paper involves talking about the economy and how trickle down is coming to be a false premise, and that wealth is actually created by buyers, not by payers. And that leads us into talking payers. Payees are people that receive payment.
Oh, okay.
And
employers.
It's hard to talk about either of those things without talking about solutions such as meta moderna, which we've been discussing every week on this show. A new philosophy of how society could be built, just like anarchy. I think it's very interesting that we had Dr. Dave on to talk about anarchy a few weeks ago, and lo and behold, we have now become an anarchist society.
We're in an anarchic state right now.
We are in an anarchic state right now. People are having a consensus of how to care for each other over and above what authority figures are telling you to do.
Right, which leads me into this like we've been talking about meta-modernism, and this guy Vervaeke is interested in this idea of the virus as a kairos, which is related to who's the Chronos. So there's Chronos and there's Kairos.
Chronos is associated with time. Chronos was one of Zeus's sons.
Right. So Kairos, it says, what is the concept of Kairos? Going to Wikipedia here. It says, in classical rhetoric, Kairos refers to the opportune time and or place, that is, the right or appropriate time, to say or do the right or appropriate thing. In Greek mythology, Kairos, the youngest child of Zeus, was the god of opportunity. And so this guy that I was listening to yesterday was talking about the virus as a kairos, as a kind of meta object. It's not an actual object, but it's a meta object that we're all having to deal with. So whatever the power structure was, societally or religiously, this kairos has come in and said, y'all, I got another game plan right now, and you're going to have to dance to my tune. So government is no longer in control of the virus. They're not in control of the virus. The church is not in control of the virus. Society is not. Interest groups are not in control of the virus.
Right.
However, this meta object has come in and is tangling with our meta narrative. So there are people who have been saying for some time that we've lost the plot in our country. What is the narrative of the country? What is the narrative of society? So we've lost the plot of the narrative. It used to be, we're number one, we're out to save the world, we killed Hitler, that's our narrative, we're good guys, right? We don't have that narrative anymore. And some people who don't read the news or history will still like, we're number one and we've never done anything wrong. That narrative is still there, but it's not a vital narrative that's connecting people into motion. So this kairos of COVID-19 is almost like a god-like force, if you go through a religious thing, that if you want to go through a religious lens, it is almost like a god-like force that says, we're doing a different number this week, and here's the choreography. And there's no authority on earth that can change that narrative. So it becomes like, You could call it nature, you could call it God, you could call it whatever you want to. But while we're dealing with toilet paper and the economy, and what does $8 trillion look like, which is, I guess, is what the Fed has dumped into the economy
Wow.
at this point, according to our friend Edno. So while we're dealing with the sort of really exciting stuff that's going on, I'm interested in dealing with challenging, as this guy says, challenging the obviousness of common sense. So there's common sense ecology, common sense economy, common sense sociology.
I think you have to stop smacking the table so much because of the recorder. Sorry.
Oh, shoot, yeah. So now.
Sorry, I know that's a big style point for you.
Now that the common sense might be challenged,
mm-hmm.
and actually that's the job of anybody who is an active participant in culture and not just a consumer of culture. It's now people who are interested in shaping culture and shaping narrative. This is the time to start challenging what people think is obvious common sense. It's not common anymore, or not useful anymore.
The world is evolving too fast for it to be common.
So that's something I want to open up as a topic. If you're listening on the radio, you're listening several days after we've done this, so your comments are not going to be...
Make comments amongst you and your friends.
The feed, we are going to create a Post-Orthodoxy page
on
Facebook.
Group.
So we'll be able to start pooling all our videos, and so the dialogue hopefully will be a dialogue that goes beyond the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want this, for me, I would like this to become a teaching moment for me. I want to learn about, I've learned all the conspiracy stuff about the Federal Reserve. I want to know the reality of the Federal Reserve, and I want to know the sort of obviousness of common sense around the economy. How much of that needs to be challenged right now to create a narrative where the general folks, the proletariat, can be involved in a narrative again.
Mm-hmm.
We've all separated into all these little subgroups. How do we create a narrative where we can get involved in creating society again?
Like the meta-modernists talk about,
yes.
Society does not exist outside of you.
Right.
It's not something that you just experience. You are creating society. You and every other person are creating society. And so it's important to shift the mentality away from a thought of like, society happens to me, or I have to live in society, to the idea of being a creator. You are creating society. Your actions and the people that you connect with and the vibes that you put out there are part of society. Society is made by humans. If there were no humans, there would be no society. I'd like to interrupt our program for this brief message that we can't put on our radio show. We would love to connect with you guys further online. We have an Instagram. Right. Post-Orthodoxy Instagram. I've been doing so much setup these past couple of weeks with our online empire, basically, that I haven't been posting on the Post-Orthodoxy Instagram as much as I like. I just reshare content that I find valuable from other people, but I am going to turn that into a hub of content sharing and conversation starting. And we also have a website, Better Time. It's betterti.me, not .com. That is also under development. It's a great place to find all the links to all our social media or emails if you'd like to get in touch with us. And then we recently this week launched our Patreon, and Patreon is a subscription service. So if you like the radio shows that we do twice a week, which are now going to be online live stream shows, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/postorthodoxy, and there are a few different tiers. The lowest tier is $5 a month. It's basically a thank you tier, where you're supporting the work that we're doing and enabling us to do these conversations and to do something that we care about with a community that we care about and pay our bills. And then there are higher tiers where you might get a sticker or a one-on-one video conversation every month where we talk about themes that you have rolling around in your head in your life. We also have a tier where we can do a book club together where we all read a book that you've picked and discuss it after a certain period of time. Dark is creating a font out of his interesting handwriting, and one of the tiers that you can subscribe to a couple times a year, he'll write a letter for you in that font, or you can have that font to download for yourself at home. So that's my first attempt at a shameless plug.
Yeah.
We want to keep doing these sorts of conversations. We want to be able to build the community and connect with other people across the planet, like the Metamodernists and the Intellectual Explorers Club and ComplexityEverywhere.com, who are people who are attempting to be creators in society, and so that we can bring the things that they're working on back to you guys and all become better co-creators together. End plug.
So let's talk about poopy butts.
Hey, that's what we've all been waiting for.
That's what we started with.
Why is everybody... Evno says he wants Dark's font. Check out our Patreon, Evno. Patreon.com/Post-Orthodoxy. Why is everybody hoarding toilet paper? Do you guys have any theories? Have you come up with theories? I know it's funny. It's fun to share memes about it.
Spoiler alert, you're going to tell us. You're going to tell us why.
I'm going to tell us my theory.
Yes.
Which Billy, can you just go lay down? Can you go lay down and be a normal dog? Go lay down. Thanks. Bye. She's just wandering around smelling things.
Yeah. She's very excited about the conversation.
Go
lay down on your
go lay down on your bed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. You click too much. Woo! Russ Zundel says, money and TP, both made of trees. So people are hoarding toilet paper as a conspiracy to end the planet sooner. Like, subliminally deep in their minds, they think, if we hoard all this toilet paper, the trees will die, we'll have no clean oxygen, and Jesus will come back. That's a theory for you.
Okay. I'm sure it's valid in some sectors.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that one of the best things you can do for yourself is start sorting through which thoughts and opinions you have are actually your thoughts and opinions, as opposed to a thought or opinion you have always had, but that somebody else gave to you.
Or that you recently have.
That someone else gave to you.
How are you going to pay for it? That's one of those things?
Right. That's actually a rich people problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem of people who don't use Google.
Yeah.
Because you can use Google and figure out
how you're going to pay for it.
How we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
There's a plan.
Yeah,
Bernie has a plan.
If you actually want to know how you're going to pay for it,
you can Google.
You can Google how you're going to pay for it. Yeah.
But people get inflamed and frustrated about that concept.
So they just throw that out.
Right.
Because
how are we going to pay for it?
That's not
actually your thought.
That's a simple question that requires a complex answer. And that requires an amount of dedication to that person to lay out a complex answer for a question that probably isn't even their own thought.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not your fear. Because, okay, so the toilet paper thing.
Yeah, the toilet paper thing. Let's get into it.
People are hoarding toilet paper. Why? Because the world might run out of toilet paper.
Or the store.
The store might run out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Something about the country infrastructure might go downhill so badly that the trucks aren't delivering stuff to Walmart. And I gotta say, it's gotta get pretty bad for Walmart to not be finding a way to turn a profit. So you can rest on that.
It's gotta be pretty bad.
Assurance. But if, for instance, it got to the point where trucks weren't driving things to Walmart and there was no more toilet paper, that would be bad. This is the thought process. I have to hoard toilet paper because the store might run out, and that would be bad. So let's keep asking questions. Why would that be bad?
Out of all the things that could be bad, why did toilet paper become the first peak of panic?
Right. Why would it be bad? Keep it real simple.
Yeah.
Why would it be bad to not have toilet paper?
Because you'd have a poopy butt.
And now, leaving aside all of the wonderfully inventive things that you could do, like the olden days, to clean your butt.
It's a relatively new invention, and there's lots of people in the world that
don't have toilet paper.
That don't use toilet paper.
Yeah, don't have or don't use toilet paper. So my theorization, and then I'll get to your guys' suggestions and comments in a second. My theorization, as I worked my way down this chain, I need to hoard toilet paper because it might run out in the stores, and that would be bad because I can't have a dirty butt.
What's wrong with the dirty? I mean, why is that the worst thing?
Right, and so we could talk about, being sanitary.
Yeah, sanitary. That's
sanitary is important, but I think it's a little more primal than that.
We have.
I think people might say because it's not sanitary, but that's actually the cover thought for the actual fear,
which is
you're an animal.
Shut up.
People are animals.
No, we're above nature and separate from nature.
We're civilized, damn it!
We're domesticated primates and we're not going back to the wilds.
I'm a good human. Please don't send me back.
Is that what it is?
I'm a good human. Please don't send me back. I'm clean. I'm doing all the human things. I'm not an animal. I'm not like that horse that just poops in the barnyard and then walks away perfectly fine. I'm a human. I'm special and different. This is the narrative that Judeo-Christianity has fed to the West, and especially the U.S., is that humans are special and different and not animals.
All right, so you're going to blame the toilet paper hoarding on Christianity.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think we've done some research and had some theorizations with other friends who have suggested various things on our rabbit trail, like Astrid from Sweden and Lynn, who comments a lot. They've suggested other things on the rabbit trail back to when did being civilized become so important? Right. Or
the idea of being civilized.
Right.
Yeah.
When did we all start ignoring our bodily functions as if they were bad and shameful? Run, Billy! She's just excited because we're yelling. She's like, why are you guys yelling in the house?
The dog is demonstrating the energy by running in circles through the house.
Everybody's got to have energy.
All right. Here comes Tulsa now. We said dog.
Oh, doggy.
Hi,
Dave Hutchins says, people are realizing our civilization is fragile and reliant on intricate supply chains that crumble under the slightest adversity. It's manifested in toilet paper. It's terrifying to not have our comforts. And I will say that is a great point, but it is the beginning of the point. Why is toilet paper a necessary comfort?
Well, Sean Yardy made an interesting point. He said maybe there's an excess of people in the U.S. with hemorrhoids. You never had hemorrhoids, I can tell.
Do you need toilet paper for hemorrhoids?
Well, that's a good question.
I would think maybe you would prefer a hot shower.
Yeah, hot shower. I mean, like, we have toilet paper at the house right now.
Yeah.
We haven't experienced a scarcity of toilet paper.
Right.
But my first thought was, I don't have a strict schedule that I obey in the course of the day, so why not just time my shower with my poop?
Yeah.
That seems like a real easy fix for a guy.
Right.
Different thing but for the chica, like, people have suggested
right,
old bed sheets.
You don't poop all the time.
Right. You have bed sheets, and you put them in strips, and you throw them to the washer.
Or all of those mismatched socks.
Anyway,
just put a
watching people freak out over the toilet paper is really, I think it does sort of expose an anal retentive aspect to our culture, where we have a lot of shame around how we got
functions.
About how we got potty trained, and I'm going to blame that on the Christians too.
Oh yeah, how so?
Just because.
You're blaming potty training on the Christians?
Yeah. Because I think, in general, this is not one particular sect, but in general, Christianity is not in line with nature. That nature is different than people. Nature is different.
The current evangelical interpretation of the Bible is...
No. This goes back like 300 years. This is like from the Council of Sens, where they're like, science goes over here. We'll stop burning you if you just stop messing with faith. And we'll go over here and we won't mess with your science. That was like 300 years ago. So it was a split in science and faith. And so faith just gets to, they don't have to qualify their statements. They don't have to have hypotheses and theories. They can just have articles of faith and you trust them and you carry on.
Right.
And then science is like, also not exactly like super hip to nature as a force, right? So nature sort of got to be the redheaded stepchild
in both cases
when the split between religion and science happened. So that's why, like, kairos, this idea of a kairos could be nature reasserting its dominance over science. It's definitely making some noise. What happened there?
My alarm for our radio show just went off. Half hour late.
So,
So science and religion got separated.
Science and religion got
A few hundred
separated.
years ago.
And so Christianity got separated from nature.
Okay.
And so you talk about nature as humans have dominion over nature as if we are not a part of nature. And
No,
so,
we're not.
and
God
so,
made us special. He made everything else, and then he made people.
right, with the Judeo-Christian concept that humans are separate from nature,
Right.
that means a lot of natural functions are really rough for fundamentalist Christians. Having sex, masturbating, pooping, periods, all that stuff is really irritating because we're not supposed to be natural.
Right.
So we don't talk about
animals.
it, we downplay it. And so, yeah,
that got kind of tied into, and I think it was Astrid that brought this up, that in the Renaissance, late 1700s, 1800s, Europe, there was also this is kind of the beginning of modern sexism, is there was kind of this separation of men from women because women are prey to natural cycles.
Oh, they're wily and they get swept up in nature.
We don't get to just decide to be separate from nature.
No.
We go through natural cycles whether we want to or not. Most women do, and so in order to continue the trend of God and faith, humans are special and separate from nature. Women kind of got knocked down the stick a little ways. Because women are not as separate from nature as they should be.
No.
And they might tempt men to be more separate from nature than they should be.
Yeah.
And so.
Thanks for doing that, by the way.
What? Tempting you away from tempting you towards being
more natural?
More natural.
Yeah,
that sentence was just so many double negatives.
There's a lot of loaded stuff going on.
Woo! Evno points out it's better to use water to get clean, like a bidet.
Yeah, it's true.
I would like to have a bidet, but you still need to dry yourself with something.
Nothing better than taking potable water and putting it on your butt when a lot of people in the world don't have potable water. What a luxury. Well, I agree, though.
I agree about the bidet science.
Yeah.
Except I'm still wondering what you dry yourself with.
They have little air dryers in them.
That's not sanitary.
What?
Are you serious?
Yeah, a little heater.
You just get wet and then blow it all over the place?
The hand dryers at the thing?
Yeah, those are also not sanitary because most people don't wash their hands properly. So when you use the blow dryer...
You're never touching the thing, right? You're just pushing the button like, squirt my butthole, dry my butthole.
See, it's fun to talk about butts. So Yardy's wondering, he's bringing up like people with irritable bowel syndrome or other diseases, people with hemorrhoids. I think that would be great. Those people should make sure that they don't run out of toilet paper because you can't just take showers forever. Because if Walmart's supply chains are breaking down, chances are we're not all going to have plumbing.
I'm also going to blame it on a crappy diet. You don't need as much toilet paper if you're having healthy poops.
Right. I mean, let's talk evolutionarily speaking for a second, which I still cringe when I say.
Evolution?
Yeah. Because I was raised that humans didn't evolve. God made us.
Boing.
Yes, exactly like that.
Not natural. Us.
God made you special.
Very special.
He made all the animals on the planet, and then he made people, which is what the planet is for. The planet is for the people.
Maybe God was a toilet paper salesman, and this is a long game he's playing.
Someday
he created an animal that needs toilet paper.
So, but like back in the day, when people weren't eating so much unhealthy processed foods full of sugars, you would have 1 or 2 or 3 clean, tight poops per day, usually shortly after your meal, because your system was actually able to process what you were eating and get the nutrients out and get rid of the stuff you didn't need. And people also used to squat to go to the bathroom. And when you squat and you have a healthy, tidy poop, your butt isn't dirty afterwards, if you think about it anatomically.
Right. If you think about it anatomically.
You pinch it off, and you're fine.
Hey, Astrid is actually in the conversation this week.
Oh, it's so nice, Astrid. Astrid's tuning in from Sweden. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's always nice to have our international audience in. She said the Finnish Estonian author Sophie Okenson, whose mother was brought up in Soviet Estonia, was so surprised about the toilet paper that was never a worry in Soviet. if you want to hoard something, you have to hoard chocolate. It's nutritious and a luxury at the same time.
Yes, so I'm thinking about the toilet paper hoarding.
Oh.
And I'm thinking about, like, but when Laura Ingalls Wilder's family set off on the Oregon Trail, they made sure they took sugar, because that's a processed thing that's hard to get. Coffee, which is a thing that is hard to get outside of the marketplace. World War II, food stamps. You had an extremely limited amount for processed things like cheeses, coffee, sugar. Like, people invented all kinds of recipes to get around not having sugar. I never heard of food stamps in the world wars for toilet paper.
Right.
We have our value system.
It's a new thing.
Our value system has shifted. That's the thing people are terrified of not having.
When I was in Hawaii, it was a common thing. Every time a big storm came, everybody bought toilet paper.
Really?
Because no ships. Like if there's like no seafaring vessels are going to show up with your toilet paper if there's a world breakdown. Right.
Right. Well, that makes sense if you're on an island.
It makes sense. They don't.
Except that you're still afraid of your bodily functions.
They don't produce toilet paper, and you know why?
Why? Why what?
Because a lot of them, like Judeo-Christianity, took over the islands.
Right, the missionaries went around the Pacific Rim and piggybacked.
Made these beautiful women wear muumuus. Are you kidding me?
Humidity.
In the humidity and the heat, where the best thing to do would be not wear anything.
Or like a little
skirt.
skirt.
And they put you in a sack with flowers on it.
You try wearing a parachute when it's hot and wet outside.
Jeez.
Lovely.
So I understand the toilet paper shortage in Hawaii and that kind of anxiety if you got that kind of problem and you were raised Christian and so you don't like your butt.
Right.
However, on the mainland, I was a little surprised.
So when I was growing up, people didn't hoard toilet paper. Like, we would have like really bad storms in southern Illinois, or tornado season, or when a hurricane was coming when we were living in North Carolina, everybody would go buy bread and water.
Bread and water.
Because, God forbid, we don't have clean water either.
My first response was like beans and rice, because it's a complete protein and it's dry. And
yeah, why are people hoarding bread? We can thank the food pyramid for that. The food pyramid is ridiculous and poisonous. Stop eating bread. The bottom of
I like it.
No, the bottom of the food pyramid is all sugars.
Yeah.
Pastas, breads. You don't need it. You don't need it. And it inflames your system, which makes you more vulnerable to other inflammation. Let's take a brief break to talk about coronavirus tips. Walk around so your lymphatic system is able to move fluids around and fight off infections. Drink lots of water. Take a ton of vitamin C. Stop eating sugars. You have to start boosting your immune system. Because the virus is here to stay. It's on the planet now.
Immune system seems to be the big focus.
You're going to encounter it.
Seems like maybe some garlic.
Anti-inflammatory foods.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of narratives.
Yeah.
And I was making fun of people who are into the America's #1. This is something that is another feather in their cap. United States just overtook Italy and China to have the most confirmed cases at one time. Right now we're at 81.9 thousand cases. We're #1.
Yes. We were behind for a while.
We rallied.
That's why the president couldn't actually initiate safety procedures, even though we had a month of notice.
Oh, 82. Sorry, we just went up another 1,000. 82.7.
He couldn't initiate safety procedures, even though we had a month of notice, because we needed to be the best at everything.
We're #1.
Best
you guys.
words, the best science, the best cases, best number of cases.
Right. Jim Constantine said poopy butts lead to social distancing. So that's...
Why?
Well, yeah. Why don't you ask
Why?
that?
Why do poopy butts lead to social distancing? Because people aren't supposed to smell.
It was supposed to be a joke.
Because you're not an animal.
It was a joke.
I'm really serious about this.
What did Astrid say?
Everything you say, you should be asking yourself why. You think that's the end of the line, but
you're dealing with somebody who just came out of a cult, so everything is questionable.
Everything is why.
Yes, yes.
I'm finally not going to hell for asking questions.
Yay! Congratulations, darling.
Sean says Hoarders showed a gal who. So the Hoarders is a TV show. It showed a gal who had used her floor as a toilet for a decade, but was still using toilet paper. So she just went on the floor, but was still using toilet paper.
Those commercials are good.
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
Let's not be crazy here. I do think it's important to be clean and healthy.
Yeah.
If you can be clean, be clean.
Right.
And it's hard when you're a girl. Girls' bodies work a little differently than boys' bodies.
Sure.
And we're trying to make this radio safe, so we can't go into gruesome details. Join our Patreon if you're interested in all the gruesome details, because we can talk about whatever we want online.
Now we have to edit that out of the show.
If you are interested in the gruesome details, you could join our Patreon.
It's possible.
And have more gruesome conversations.
Still kind of a call to action? I don't know. Take 2.
Right. Let's see. Evno's calling you out. You shower with drinkable water and flush your toilet with drinkable water.
It's true.
We talk to people about this all the time.
It's true.
We're not just cutting it off at bidets.
He and I are on the same page.
Yeah, we all agree. It's kind of scary and ridiculous. I think every house should have a gray water system. I think people should stop being afraid of dirt. And understand that, like, the water that you bathe with and the water that you wash your dishes with could be used to water your lawn and flush your toilet. But that would be a whole new infrastructure.
It's a whole other thing.
Parallel institutions.
This might be a good time for that.
Astrid says, I had a theory 2 days before people over in Sweden started hoarding that the U.S. has a collective idea that you're waiting for World War III. So when in crisis, there is a rush to that type of thinking, toilet paper and canned foods.
Okay.
I definitely agree with you that the U.S. has been primed for World War III because, in general, U.S. citizens have a mentality that the rest of the world is out to get us.
For good reason.
Even though, in actual fact, the U.S., not the citizens, but the U.S. infrastructure is being a bully on the planet. Yeah. The citizens have been told that the world is out to get us. And so we are kind of waiting all the time for all of those bad guys out there to finally swim across the ocean and get us.
Yeah.
I agree with you, unfortunately.
I tend to think it's more, I would agree and go further and say that it's the Judeo-Christian teaching around apocalypse. Is that actually because 70% of Americans are still tied into the Judeo-Christian paradigm.
Yeah, did you know that 70% of U.S. citizens still identify as Christian?
Right, so that large number, I think every time we get close to the idea that the world is ending or apocalypse is happening, anytime we get close to that, people get excited because they're not enjoying their lives as Christians because if you actually interact with your natural self or other people with their natural self, it puts you into conflict with your Judeo-Christian self, which has put a little monitor in your head that keeps you second guessing your own natural thoughts.
Right.
So you don't know how to believe yourself. You only know how to believe external authorities because that was the training. Right? So in this country, people are waiting for death, really.
Because life sucks.
Because life blows when you're fighting nature every moment of your life. Every impulse, every thought is fighting the Judeo-Christian, or is in conflict with the Judeo-Christian model. And so any moment where it's like the end is near, people are like, oh yay, finally, I get to go to that place that I paid my dues. I didn't masturbate for like 12 years. I totally get to get into heaven now.
Right.
And they're looking at this other thing because they're not happy here. And we've engineered us to not be happy here. Because also stress and fear makes people want to buy crap.
And Christians can't say they're not having a good time. The answer for that is that Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me.
Yeah.
You know, like there's an answer for everything. You're stuck in it because you're at constant risk of not being loved. That is the fear of hell. You can say eternal damnation all you want, but the terror of hell that gets struck into conservative Christian hearts is separation. It's the hell of separation. You will be alone forever. You will be away from love forever. If God is love, hell is separation from God.
Right.
So, gotta follow the rules. And hope that it ends soon so that you can keep behaving correctly to the end.
So much work.
You aren't separated from love for eternity.
So much work living.
It is. This is a conversation I've been having with a couple of my siblings, actually.
So this is the guy that I was talking about earlier in the show, John Vervaeke, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. He's talking and he's really unhappy with the terms that he's using because he hasn't figured out how to phrase it. But the idea of
we're inventing everything.
We need a non-religious religion. The idea of religio is actually finding connection. the root word, finding connection.
Oh, yeah, that's what the fun Christians who are having a better time say, is that it should be a relationship.
So the idea of a non-religious religion is because we've lost the plot of our narrative, we've lost the meta narrative of who we are as a people, be that limited by borders or limited by planet. Who we are as a people, we don't have a mythos that we can tap in and say, we're on a mission and we have meaning and we can find meaning in our working together.
In general, humans have a drive to be a part of something.
There was another thing that this guy brought up, which he was talking about what kinds of consciousness do our economic policies produce? So the idea of the communist economic policy produces a certain consciousness in the population. A capitalist economy does affect the consciousness of the people who are negotiating that reality. This sort of push, what I've seen recently towards democratic socialism,
or socialist democracy,
that will produce or is being fueled by a consciousness that is produced by the ideas of that thing. So looking at the bigger picture of not whether one is right or the other is wrong, what kind of consciousness does your economic policy produce? And right now, our economic, late stage capitalism, I'll say it, late stage capitalism is producing a me first consciousness.
Right.
Me first.
Because of game theory over the last 100 years, U.S. citizens have been trained to think that you need to take care of yourself first because other people are not going to take care of you. Game theory hand in hand with the Judeo-Christian concept of original sin, that people are born selfish and broken and have to have religion or some other structure to keep them from being selfish and broken. So hand in hand with that game theory, it just went like, you got to take care of yourself first because nobody else is going to. And if everybody's
out against you, actually. It's not that nobody's going to.
Even worse.
People will get yours if you're not paying attention.
Right. And so, but if everybody's taking care of themselves first, the system will work. And that's where capitalism comes in. You try to get the best you can, and you'll bring along the workers that are working for you, and everybody will try to get the best they can.
So Audrey was commenting, I think, on a previous topic that we were talking about, which she said... Astrid, sorry. She said it's a very medieval way of thinking, and she's talking about the Judeo-Christian separate from nature, waiting to die.
Right.
What I find very interesting, if we're going to talk about the idea of the virus as a kairos that's coming in to level the playing field a little bit, there was a story that I read about the Enlightenment came after the plague because the plague destroyed people's faith in the gods of the time.
Okay, we're going to break that down a little bit.
Once the gods of pray to God, doesn't matter. The plague has no God, right?
The plague doesn't care about your God.
It doesn't care about your God. Doesn't matter what faith you are. That plague is going to come in and do something. It didn't matter what church you went to. You were not one way or the other affected by faith in that God.
Right.
So the Enlightenment came when people were like, well, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. Maybe we need some new ideas, some new ways of perceiving. And so this is an opportunity for us to get outside of our own present medieval thinking around religion, politics, society, economy.
So maybe that's why a bunch of people are still going to church, because God is in control.
Well, this is Darwinian now.
I have to believe that God is in control because that's what I'm basing all my behavior around. I'm doing the right thing forever, even though it's not very fun, because God is in control and I want to go to heaven, so I am not forever separated from my loved ones. And if God is in control, then it doesn't matter about the coronavirus. If I stay home out of fear of the coronavirus, then I am admitting that God is not in control.
Right.
So I have to go to church.
So these big mega churches are basically saying, screw social distancing. This is the time to renew our faith.
Right. Because God is in control.
And this is where we find out if that faith is solid or if this is Darwinian, what they're doing. They're actually thinning the herd for people who have decided to ignore the current information.
Who's they? Who's thinning the herd of the earth? I saw a nice meme that was like...
When they say, look, we might be able to avoid creating a situation where everybody can't get the care they need due to our current infrastructure.
Right.
So they're saying, let's spread this out. That's the flattening the curve idea. Let's spread this out so people can get sick. We can take care of them.
Right.
If we congregate, there's going to be a lot of people. We're not going to be able to deal with it, and people will die.
There won't be enough ventilators.
So when I say they, I'm saying people like the governor of Mississippi who said, we're not going to make any recommendations for social distancing or closing down schools or closing down restaurants. I'm going to pray. That's what the governor of Mississippi said.
Okay.
And now they have a big spike.
So you think the governor wanted a bunch of people in Mississippi to die?
No, I think the governor said this is a hoax because the president said it was a hoax.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas said they don't have to do anything because they have a low concentration of Chinese people.
Oh my goodness. That has to stop.
Right?
Although we
so
did
this
call
is
it the
social,
Spanish flu.
This is social Darwinism. This is where when people say, okay, there's some science saying maybe we can help our neighbors by doing something that is selfless, which is like, I'm going to take some time off of work. I'm not going to go out. I'm going to be conscientious about how I interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can save some lives. People like Mississippi, like the governor of Mississippi and the people in charge in Kansas are saying, I don't agree with the science. The president said we should get back because that's more dangerous to shut down the economy.
Right.
That's social Darwinism. That's where the people who you've elected to represent you, they naturally start to thin the herd through not paying attention to the information of the day because they're tied into some desert sky god nonsense.
Well, my family shared an article this week that we had a brief but fiery conversation about through text because we are coming from completely different worldviews. About a man who was saying, this is going to be a really crass breakdown of the article, it is more dangerous, it is worse for the economy to crash than for the projected 600,000 U.S. citizens to die.
Right.
And my family was agreeing with him.
Yeah.
And they didn't really like that they were agreeing with him.
Grandma had a good run.
I pointed out to them that, 600,000 people isn't that bad. My family is extremely pro-life, and that's less than the last reported amount of abortions in the U.S. So I guess 600,000 people dying for the economy is not that bad.
How'd that go over with them?
My sister said, you're right, we shouldn't be flippant. All life is precious. But doing our best to stay healthy and then 600,000 people dying because of the plague is not the same thing as a woman deliberately killing a baby she doesn't want. Which is their position. And so that's kind of where it ended because I know I'm not going to be able to argue with them about abortion in a productive way.
Very good.
Yeah. Astrid says, isn't that the sort of bizarre irony with strict religion that there is a loss of trust in humans as being good? God or Jesus is supposed to hold the goodness, belief, and trust and puts humans as being total losers on the side. Yeah, I think if you actually just read Jesus' words, it's like 100% democratic socialism. It's like 100. Jesus' words is like 100%. Take care of your neighbor. Work together. Take care of the orphans and the widows and the elderly. Share amongst each other so that everybody has enough. Hoarding was looked down upon. It was not a capitalistic society. Billie Jean, she just ran into the camera. No, go lay down. Laying down is a good idea. Oh my gosh. Sorry, darling.
Say stuff.
I'm trying to say things. This is not the way we usually do these live streams. Evna was wondering earlier, how do we equate poopy buttholes with the economy? What does poopy buttholes have to do with the economy? And I think we kind of wafted our way to it. well enough.
Right. Well, so it goes to this idea of what I've been listening to this guy John Vervaeke, which I think, did I put that comment in? I don't know if I put that comment.
You put the YouTube link in there.
I did?
Mm-hmm.
So he has this whole thing on awakening from the meaning crisis. So I think when we're talking about poopy buttholes, and we're talking about the Federal Reserve, and we're talking about the economy, and we're talking about science, and we're talking about religion, all this ties into the idea of the narrative of the people and the place. We used to have a clear narrative as a nation.
Which I did not grow up with because we weren't very political, but I understand what you're saying.
At one point, the narrative was, look, there's only savages here. Let's go make this God's land.
Right.
And then there was like, we are favored by God because look at what we did. And then we get to take this land and do whatever the hell we want with capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And then World War II happens. And we're like, look, we just saved the entire planet. We're a new country. And we just saved the entire planet from Satan himself. That was our narrative. The Greatest Generation had a whole narrative. We saved the world from Satan.
Hitler.
Yeah. Satan, Hitler, same thing. So these generations had narratives. Like the boomer generation had a narrative of, we're going to fight the power.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be shoved into a box. We're all not going to wear the same suit and the same hat and the same tie. We're going to fight for some individualism. That went to neoliberalism, which is where everybody gets to be rich and upper middle management, which left the deplorables completely undone, and they then reacted by helping Trump become our president. That's one reading of how these narratives generate the world that we live in. I keep killing your roses. So tying it back to the poopy butthole.
Right.
What is our narrative now?
What is the U.S.?
What is the U.S.? What is our narrative? Are we the shining light on the hill?
I think that's what
spreading...
citizens think.
No, I don't think so anymore.
Yeah, the citizens think we're spreading freedom.
Some do.
I think more than you think.
A lot
Citizens think that we're spreading freedom to the rest of the planet. We're the big sister on the playground.
If you have to look at our voting record, we've been not spreading democracy as much as being fascist, overtaking other countries, like interventionist wars, getting into countries that have resources. We suddenly get involved in their politics and change their leaders. That's not the narrative that a lot of the most patriotic people are aware of.
They don't know that that's why we're getting involved in other people's politics. A lot of citizens think that we're getting involved in other people's politics because that country was a horrible place to live.
They need more democracy.
And we're going to go help them.
They need more freedom, and we know all about freedom, so we're going to go give it to them. Well, that narrative is failing, and it's failing more and more. So, what is the new narrative? What is the narrative where people who believe the narrative that we're good and we're number one, and the people who have become too aware of our history to subscribe to that narrative? So their narrative is that we're an empire that is abusive and it needs to be fixed, right? So that is, there's the Abraham Lincoln thing about a house divided cannot stand. We have hyper-partisanship between the left and the right. We have hyper-partisanship between people who know our history and people who believe a nonsense history that is taught to them.
That you think that you know correct American history because of the person who gave it to you, who you trusted.
Right. So
who maybe they got it from someone that they trusted, but it's actually incorrect history.
It's an incorrect history. So now we have this Chiron that comes in, that is this virus that says, all your base belong to us.
Everything that you thought was in control is not in control.
Is not in control.
Because the virus can do whatever
it wants.
Virus
is in control. So now everybody has to stop posturing to be the one in control and deal with this Chiron, to deal with this moment. And at that moment, that's where we start, we have to create a new narrative. One thing I liked about this fairly geeky social science philosopher, John Vervaeke, is towards the end of this thing that I was watching of him, he was saying, I want to steal the culture. This Chiron is creating a moment of opportunity.
For an enlightenment.
For an enlightenment, for a change of behavior. Maybe the rules that we know, the systems that we believe, the authorities that we trust are not that. Mm-hmm. Something new can happen now. This is what the Chiron means. Something new can happen now. And what is the new? There are some people who've been thinking about the new for a long time and how to do it. And there's other people who are caught off guard that something new could even happen.
And that find something new happening to be scary.
But right now, there are people who spent their entire lives totally obsessed on sports statistics. And their life revolves around sports and the game and their knowledge, and that collapsed. We don't have that now. Mm-hmm. That knowledge is not doing you much good. So that shows somebody who had the ability to really closely look at something, invest in it, and build it, now has an opportunity to build something else.
Do that with some other hobby.
Right. So that's not going to happen until the other thing collapses. So sports has collapsed temporarily.
Right.
And so there's a void. And so there's the opportunity for people who have certain minds and certain enthusiasms to pick up another mantle, or to just wait indefinitely for that to be a thing again, where tens of thousands of people can gather into a place.
Right.
So what do you do until tens of thousands of people can gather into a place? Maybe there's other things to be interested in, other stats to explore, other things to promote. Mm-hmm. So I think the Poopy Butthole connected to our current economic system is something, it's connected in a way that whole thing is connected to our societal story about ourselves. And there's the opportunity to build another story to where if there's an emergency, the first concern for a number of people is not their butt.
Right.
Actual butt.
Will my butt be clean so that I can continue to not be an animal?
Is that a satisfactory response to Evno's question?
I don't know. We'll see what Evno thinks about it. Robert Edwards earlier on said, "Dare I join in?"
That's up to him.
And I said it's a free country.
Yeah.
So he said the best predictions for the U.S. are under 100,000 deaths. And I don't know if he means the best predictions as in the biggest prediction or
the most opportune.
The most optimistic prediction is only under 100,000 deaths in the U.S. The Depression has been associated with 7 million U.S. deaths.
Yeah. How long was the Depression?
I don't know.
How long has this been going on?
2 months?
Yeah.
3 months?
Yeah. Who knows? Those are some nice statistics. Thank you for that.
I feel like maybe the point is that we should just carry on trying to save the economy because really what can compare with the 7 million deaths from the Great Depression, which we might be in if we don't fix the economy. So it's better to fix the economy so we don't get into another Great Depression, because 600,000 deaths or 100,000 deaths is nothing compared to 7 million, and so it's more important to fix the economy than to shut the economy down for the sake of healthcare.
Oh, that's it. I have a response to that.
I see that chain of thought.
I totally see that chain of thought. Thank you because I didn't see it until you explained it. And maybe that's right or not, but I guess my response to that is we don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. We are corporate livestock being managed by people like the Federal Reserve, which we haven't really gotten into, which the Federal Reserve is not a federal agency. Mm-hmm. It's just a name given to a cartel of bankers.
What?
A banking cartel.
So here's my thought of the Federal Reserve.
It's a banking cartel.
I thought the Federal Reserve was like a building / now cyber building that is run by the U.S. government, that U.S. representatives vote about.
No.
That has all of the U.S. money in it.
Federal Reserve was started in 1913. The idea is that it is independent. It has a board of 12 or 14 members, and they serve 14-year terms, each one, but they are appointed by a president.
The president appoints the board members of the Federal Reserve.
Right. And there's a dozen or 14, there's 12 different Federal Reserve banks in various states around the country.
What year was it started in?
1913.
Okay. What were we doing with our money before then?
So we kept having problems where the bank only had the money, which was backed by gold. And so let's say something economically terrible happened.
Like the Great Depression?
No, before that, like
Okay.
little things, like something, maybe a bad drought, and the farmers have a bad day, and so people suddenly get panicked that there's an economic problem, so they go take their money out of the bank because they're afraid the bank will fail, and if the bank fails, they don't get their money back. So the problem is, if one bank failed, other people panicked in other banks, and there was a whole problem of insolvency of banks. So banks were coming and going all the time. The idea of the Federal Reserve is that you have a bank, privately owned, but 6% of your money is put in a reserve that goes to the main Federal Reserve Bank.
6% of my actual money?
6% of whatever the reserves of the bank, right? So let's say you have 1,000 people with $1,000 in a bank.
Okay.
They're not all going to need the $1,000 at the same time.
Right.
So the bank has that money to invest and do things with and make money off of the money.
Right.
Right?
Wait, our banks are making money
Oh,
off of
yes.
our money?
Yes. You put money in, then they start investing it in things.
That doesn't seem fair. Why
If
don't
you-
they go invest their own money?
Well, it is their own money now. They have a bank.
Go lay down, Billy.
So anyway, the
Jesus Christ.
the idea was that these 12 banks take a percentage of their money, put it into the main Federal Reserve in DC, so that you're insured. So if that bank fails, the main Federal Reserve can make it solvent, and there's not a run on the other banks.
Huh.
That was the general idea.
So it was like, okay, you guys are investing too much. If something crashes, somebody will panic. Big Daddy is going to keep some of your money in a
Right.
piggy bank
Right.
so that if somebody crashes, we actually have real money to back you up.
Right.
Okay.
So the president takes care of the people, appoints the people on the boards. We can figure out what that's a whole rabbit hole to go down what
Okay.
that process is like. I imagine it has something to do with corpses in the desert or something. I don't know. But anyway, from that point, those people dictate the monetary policy for the country.
Those 14 people.
Those 14 people in the Federal Reserve
Okay.
dictate monetary policy.
What monetary policy?
Yeah, good question.
Like,
They can
shouldn't
suddenly,
that money just be sitting there in case there's a crash?
well, since the country's in a problem, we'll just make $8 trillion. And then the taxpayers will have to pay that back, I guess, is how it works.
Yeah, see, this is the part where I think most people are like, well, I'm glad somebody is handling it because
Yeah.
what does that mean, make money? What do you mean they make money?
They turn on the printers. It's not backed by anything. Well, it's backed by the petrodollar is a big thing. It was and right now China,
Russia.
Russia, Pakistan. I mean, that's why we killed Gaddafi, because he wanted to get rid of the petrodollar. That's why we went into Iraq the last time, because they wanted to get rid of the petrodollar.
You mean
The reason we
they wanted
tolerate
to start selling
Oil.
the oil from their country and have people pay them in their country's
in
currency
their country's currency.
instead of having people pay them in U.S. dollars.
So U.S. dollars, the idea that all these countries are selling oil under the dollar gives the illusion that the dollar is worth something.
Right.
So now we don't have these big trading partners like China, Russia, Pakistan. These countries are saying we're not going to trade oil in dollars. That's why I was able to get diesel for like $1.80 yesterday. So,
So you posted that on your timeline, the news that several
Yeah.
other world powers are deciding to sell oil from their country and get paid
in their own
and
currency,
get paid in their own
currency.
money.
Right.
And somebody was like, "Oh my God, that's gonna ruin our economy."
Yes.
Like you guys do
It
know,
artificially
you guys
inflates the dollar.
do know that the U.S. doesn't own the planet, right? Like we're just one.
So the reason that Donald Trump allowed a U.S. journalist to be hacked up with a bone saw
What?
is, Khashoggi. He was hacked up with a bone saw, and rather than saying, what a president normally in history would do is like, you can't screw with a U.S. citizen that way. We're going to have sanctions. We're going to investigate. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Is because Saudi Arabia is the biggest oil cartel on the planet.
What's a cartel?
A cartel is it's a cabal. It's a cabal. So we allow. Stop it.
Pardon
Stop.
us.
We allow the cabal to do whatever it wants, right? So the idea of spreading democracy, we don't ever mess with Saudi Arabia. We don't care that they don't let women drive cars. We don't care about them, stoning people in the streets and Stone Age rituals and their kingship and their lack of democracy, as long as they trade in dollars. So we let Saudi Arabia, we interfere in all these other Middle Eastern countries that we're not trading in dollars or threatening not to trade in dollars. But we never mess with Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia always trades in dollars. And that has been the artificial inflation of the U.S. dollar since the 50s, I believe. Okay. Right?
What was the name of that really, really great YouTube video that we watched that was about the history of oil trading in dollars? It was like this.
I have to look it up again. It's called The History of Oil. It's a one-man show.
And it's all steampunky to make it visually interesting, but it's also really informative.
So it's about, a lot of people don't know that World War II was about Iraq.
It wasn't because Friedrich was assassinated.
No, it was about Iraq. It was about the Germans trying to build a train line to Iraq so they had oil. The rest of the country was like, Germans are crazy. We can't let them have oil. And so we invented a reason to go into World War II, which was to make sure Germany didn't get a direct line to Iraq.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one of the stories. So,
no, when you say story, people think it's a theory. Like, it's not a theory.
Well, it's history if you look at it, but you're not going to go through Wikipedia to find it. You have to go through. You have to find the stubs from other stories to piece together the story. Everybody knows. Most people who've looked into World War II know it wasn't about Ferdinand or Hitler.
Right.
It was about Germany getting oil and threatening the other oil economies. America had just started cranking on oil. Like, we were the new gangster in the town. Like, we had oil. We didn't have much before. We had some steel. We could do that business. But oil was the new economy. It was the new engine of economy. And we had a ton of oil.
The U.S. had oil?
Oklahoma was built on oil. There was supposed to be a reservation until they found oil. California had oil. All these... Once we had oil, we realized we could dominate the world, and that's why we had to make the deal with Saudi Arabia to trade in our dollars, because we had a more established economic model than they did. Anyway, go down that rabbit hole.
Brief interjection. We're hearing from Brian Sinclair here in Butte that a stay-at-home order has been issued.
Oh, yeah?
And so I'm hoping for a link so we can look at that and give you guys more information. It's going to be rolling across the country for a while, I'm sure. I guess that just means don't go party.
No big concerts tonight.
Montana Standard. Thank you for that article, Brian. So Robert Edwards says that U.S. citizens don't pay back pay back money created by the Federal Reserve. So they just make money, and it just now we just have more money.
It's not as exclusive if there's more of it, so it's worth less. See Zimbabwe and wheelbarrows of dollars to go buy a 6-pack of beer.
That's what everybody's terrified of.
Yeah.
So looks like Montana told to shelter in place. This just in. Governor Steve Bullock issued a shelter-in-place order, a measure meant to keep the state's 100.6 million residents at home in an attempt to slow the spread. The order takes effect Saturday at midnight. That's interesting.
Let's go spread disease between now and Saturday.
What does stay at home mean?
Grocery store, essentials, no hanging outside the Part Street liquor.
Under the shelter-in-place order, people will still be allowed to exercise outdoors near their homes, but must follow orders banning non-essential social and recreational gatherings of more than 10 people outside a home if a distance of 6 feet between people cannot be maintained. Public health experts have said because Montana was among the last states to announce a known COVID case and is less densely populated than the others, it has a chance to act aggressively now and slow the spread to learn from the responses in areas that have been hit hard, like the big city centers. Interesting. Earlier this week, about 15,000 people had filed for unemployment benefits in Montana. So that doesn't seem like anything's necessarily going to change for me.
No.
Because I do already stay at home and I've stopped having friends over.
Yeah.
And we go for walks with the dogs. Astrid says Sweden is the only country in the world that's not locking down. How do you feel about that? Why are they not locking? Do they just have a ton of ventilators so they know they're going to be fine?
Let's see where Sweden is on the list.
If we had just all started producing ventilators back in December when this became a thing, everybody would be a lot healthier.
Does anybody know what's going on in Russia? Like, I have this incove219.live, which is the 17-year-old's updating thing on confirmed cases, total deceased, total serious, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm looking for Sweden on that list to see where they are and the whole thing. But what I found interesting is that, like, Russia has not seemed to have been... I don't see the red dots on the map in Russia. The way that I see it in Europe and the U.S. and South Africa.
Well, like we tell people, there could be a lot of different reasons for that. It could be that
testing,
that they just don't have enough tests, or it could be that Russia has a lockdown on letting information out about their country. You know, like catty moms at church that don't want you talking about their family problems with the other moms because they need to maintain a sense of power so that you don't know that they have problems.
So Sweden has 2,800 confirmed. The rate went up 12% today. 77 dead. 16 recovered. Anyway.
Astrid says Sweden has the only government that is listening to the experts. Are the experts saying don't lock down?
No, Trump is. Here.
Well, but what does she mean Sweden is the only country that's listening to the experts? Does that mean people are actually social distancing so they don't have to force you to lock down?
It's cold outside.
Maybe that's why Russia doesn't have as many cases, because they're not
That's the other
socializing
thing.
as much.
There's not a lot of socializing. One thing that I'm really, I have relationships with folks in South Africa. And South Africa is just entering into the flu season. And they're rapidly rising on the list of fatalities and contracted cases.
So they have less, yeah.
They're coming from their summer to their winter. So, and they're already getting some really high numbers as they move into winter because they don't have the ability to social distance. Transportation.
Of communal homes,
they don't have individual cars. There's a lot of like communal transportation, communal living. They're a very social country. So
nobody has
the idea of self-isolating, washing your hands is a luxury,
right,
for a lot of people. So that's a number to watch because that, our friend Kokela Masomi, he's been he's the news. He was the news guy for Nongoma FM. He's paying a lot of attention outside of the social tropes and looking at the numbers. And right now, South Africa looks to be. It doesn't look optimistic.
And we know that the cases are going to be worse than anything reported because the reports are only collated off of test results. So my friend Casey here in Butte, her kid is sick, probably with coronavirus. After a couple of days of calling and going to hospitals and getting advice, he finally got tested, but they haven't got the results from the test. His test kit has been put into a lottery of people to get tested. And if his number is drawn, they'll test him and let her know if he has coronavirus. But she was saying that there should be a way for people who are interacting with high-risk folks, such as grandparents that babysit you regularly or something like that, they should be able to be bumped up the list to get tested. And so numbers in South Africa are going to be only a small fraction of how many people are actually sick and dying, unfortunately.
Yeah, South Africa is moving up really quickly right now. They were 400 at the last week sometime, and now they're moving pretty quickly. They're up 30% in one day.
Gosh.
They're at 927, but again, how much testing is happening in South Africa?
Right.
Have we gone past 2 hours?
No, we haven't. We've got 40 minutes left.
Oh, that's great.
So, you've told me that the Federal Reserve...
Right. Private company.
Is a private company with 14 board members who each serve really long terms, and they are appointed by presidents.
They're appointed by presidents. The Federal Reserve is started by all the big banking families you've heard of. Morgan, as in J.P. Morgan, the Rothschilds, like all the big names that when you start going into the conspiracy realm, you find.
Okay.
Which are the most powerful people on the planet. They're not in Forbes. They're not in Fortune 500. Fortune 500 is like the cosmopolitan of rich people who want their name in a magazine. Vladimir Putin is supposedly the richest person in the world, but you don't see him in Fortune 500 because he doesn't care. So there's the Fortune 500, which is the ostensible, who owns what and who is rich, and then there's people who look at the Fortune 500 as like extremely lowbrow. Right. So those are the kind of people. Those are the kind of people that started the Federal Reserve.
Right.
These are families that have been involved in empire since the 1600s, and they're still involved in empire.
Oh, and by empire you mean that the planet is not run by countries; it's run by financial structures who tell the countries how to run.
They dictate policy.
Right.
For their benefit.
Right.
So you think the Federal Reserve is a government entity. Some people do. It's not a government entity. It's a private corporation, so that if they have to suddenly have to print $8 trillion, who do we owe that money to?
Who do we owe that money to?
The people that run the Federal Reserve. And they made money by printing it. They spent some money.
The U.S. government pays the Federal Reserve to print money?
Yeah.
What?
So we as Americans are paying the Federal Reserve for our money.
Oh. And then we have to give it back to them.
Yeah, we got to get it back to them.
That's such a racket.
I think if more people knew that, we might be having different discussions.
That is such a racket.
Yeah, it's a good racket.
That's like, should be illegal. Should be illegal.
It's good work if you can get it.
Nice work if you can get it. Okay, so what?
So somebody should tell me where I'm wrong. Like, I want to know more about the Federal Reserve, how it works, how the economy works. Wall Street is just Vegas, as far as I'm concerned, except they're gambling with our money. Pensions and such, you know.
So,
like when you're a guy with a 401k and you put your money in a mutual fund, you have somebody manage your mutual fund.
Okay.
And that managing of the mutual fund means that they're going to take your money and they're going to put it in companies that they think are doing good, which might be nuclear energy. It might be oil. It might be non-renewables.
It might be weapons.
It might be weapons. It might be a pharmaceutical company that's choking your family, right? But you don't know because you put it into a 401k. You put it into a mutual fund.
You don't know what you're investing in.
So you're investing.
Those are my husband's accounts.
In things that make a lot of money, but you don't always know, especially the 401, the poor bastards in the 401ks,
right,
and the mutual funds. They don't know what they're investing in. Often.
Right.
And so they are fueling the thing that seems like it will make the most money, because that's what they want their guy to do, because they're going to retire and they want a bunch of money.
Okay, so so people that have money can invest money to make more money. And then the U.S. government invests that money also and makes money.
Well, the banks do, which is not the U.S. government.
Okay. So what is Wall Street?
Yeah.
No, but like, what is Wall Street?
Wall Street, it's a casino.
Who are the people trading on Wall Street? Is that like a representative from Johnson & Johnson or a representative from Pepsi is in a building on Wall Street looking at numbers, scrolling by on the screen like they
No,
show
those
you
are
in
traders.
the movies?
Those are traders. Those are like the pizza delivery guys for the billionaires.
So what are the traders doing?
They're trying to figure out how to maximize profits.
Who hired the traders?
People who have a good record at trading.
What?
People who have a good record at trading.
No, but I mean who hired those people? Who are they working for?
All right, look, stock market. So let's say there's bananas and there's copper and there's wheat
In the world.
in the world.
Yes.
There's not a lot of wheat, so if you produce a lot of wheat, you can make a lot of money.
By being a person selling something people need.
Right. So, like, if you're a stock trader, you're looking at what is in demand, what's not in demand,
Okay.
what might be in demand in the future,
Right.
and you try to anticipate that, and you gamble on that. And other people are like,
How
well,
are you gambling
hold
on
on.
it?
you use other people's money. So people say, like, I want to invest in the stock market, but I don't know anything about it. You're like, well, I know what's going on, so I'm going to take your money and I'm going to invest it. That person may be taking money from numbers of clients,
So we got to be real basic here
pooling
because,
their money.
because I've never thought about this.
All right.
Okay. And I know a lot of people that also don't care about Wall Street because they don't have money for Wall Street.
Right.
So there's a bunch of wheat, and you think it's about to be something a lot of people want to buy because the new Avengers movie, they were eating a cool snack that was made with a bread.
Okay, all right.
So like the new Avengers, shawarma.
Okay,
Right?
shawarma.
So
is
all
new
the
thing.
Avengers went to get shawarma in the movie. So now all the kids want their parents to go buy shawarma. So you
Okay.
as a smart trader are like, we need to invest in things people need to make shawarma. And I don't know how you make shawarma, but I'm
Mutton.
Okay, so we need
Find a sheep farmer.
we need to invest in sheep farming because more people are going to be buying that so that mom and pop sandwich shops and Euro stores
Right.
and smoothie shops can all make shawarma
Right.
because all the kids are going to want to buy it. Okay, so some dude takes people's money who have 401ks and
Individual
gives
investors
it,
or 401ks.
gives
yeah.
it to the sheep farmers.
Invest
What does that
basically
mean?
makes a bet. So it says, I'm buying shares in
Okay.
this sheep farm
So
because I buy the share for $12, and in 12 weeks, I think it's going to be $27.
So the sheep farm's worth $100,000, and the
Okay.
farmer needs more money to make more sheep because he knows people are about to be buying more shawarma. So he gets money from stock market traders who are investing people's retirements, and they give him the money, and then
No.
when he makes profits,
No,
they
the
make
sheep
profits.
the sheep farmer sells according to market price.
Okay.
Market price is dictated by the gamblers. So the gamblers are saying, we think sheep are going to be a big deal. And so they all start buying shares, which makes sheep expensive.
Where do the shares exist?
So maybe
What are
the sheep
shares?
farmer will benefit because his prices have gone up because the speculators have said the prices are going to go up.
Okay.
Right? But nobody's giving him money.
What are shares?
So let's say you have a show called Post-Orthodoxy. And you're going to package it in some sort of form that you can deliver to somebody.
Cassette tapes.
Cassette tapes or exclusive content,
Okay.
for example. So that content becomes valuable when it becomes popular.
So Post-Orthodoxy is about to be popular.
You say it's popular,
Okay.
and you get it on the ground floor
By doing what?
by supporting that entity, by
giving
buying a
it-
share. Let's say we have 100 shares in. You invent it like a pizza slice. You just chop it up and say there's 100 shares.
Who do I tell?
You have to trade. You have to. So to be on the market, to be on the stock exchange,
Something people gamble on.
you make your company public.
Okay.
And public means that there are shares that you can buy, and the shares have a price.
So the money isn't going to me.
It depends on how many shares you have in your own entity.
So I could say Post-Orthodoxy is worth 100 shares, and
No,
it's about.
let's say there's no finite number of shares.
Oh.
But to say if you buy a share,
Uh huh.
that share is $12.
So.
But if it becomes very popular and suddenly Nike wants to advertise on the Post-Orthodoxy show and you're making lots of money,
you might be able to sell that share to another speculator
for $50.
who thinks if he buys it from you for $50, it might keep going up,
Exactly.
and then he'll make more. So
That's
it's not actually the sheep.
No.
And it's not actually supporting the farmer making the sheep.
It's confidence.
It's you're gambling on the idea that this thing might keep selling for more money.
And it might, or it might not.
So it's just ideas. You're just gambling on ideas.
Yes.
You're taking people's money who are investing for retirement.
It's gambling.
And gambling on the idea that because of the new Avengers movie, people might start buying more sheep.
Some
to
people
make more shawarma.
invested in oil futures because they thought it's a finite resource. And so obviously it will go up.
Okay, so should that be wrong? I mean,
Well,
if people want to gamble on the idea that something's going to be popular and worth...
Here's where I find it becomes problematic.
Okay.
So let's say you have a car and you have to get car insurance. And you're compelled by the state to get the insurance.
As in, you can't be a driver in Montana unless you have car insurance.
So you are compelled by the state
Forced.
to give money to a public entity. Or to a private entity.
Oh, car insurance companies are private companies.
They're private companies.
That make money.
Right. So the state says you have to give money to this some private corporation.
Okay.
In order to be in compliance with the state, or we'll throw you in jail.
Okay.
Right. So those private companies, then, let's say you have 1,000 people that are paying you $500 a year. And if they wreck their car, you fix the car.
Pay to fix the car.
Most likely, most of those people are not going to wreck all their cars.
All at once.
So then they pay you that money, then you have a surplus of money. So what do you do with that money? You invest it in the stock market. So you, by buying car insurance, is giving money to a private corporation.
So not only are they earning money off of me,
yes,
they are also using the money that they earned off of me being forced by the government to pay them. They are also taking that money and making more money for themselves.
They are empowering market forces.
Okay, what's that?
A market force.
What's that?
So like the insurance company has all this money, and they want to make it into more money.
Right.
And so they look at what's happening in the stock market, and right now the arms industry is happening in the stock market. So they invest, but geez, the arms industry is flagging. We have a bunch of weapons, but there's not enough war. So you take that money, you buy influence. Now we go into conspiracy. This may be going into conspiracy, but I think this is how business works.
And I mean, definition
is that if you have power
right.
and influence, and the illusion of war makes people want to secure themselves, then you will have more arms built and your stock will go up. So you, as a person who's just trying to insure the car to keep from going in jail with the state, is driving a market force.
That perhaps pays a company to put out more ads about how other countries are dangerous so
yes.
that people think we should probably be going to war, which makes it okay for us to spend a bunch of money on weapons, which means that the stock price of weapons being profitable goes up and the insurance company is able to make more money.
And that's how Rachel Maddow makes $30,000 a day.
A day?
A day.
I don't know if I make $30,000 a year.
She makes $30,000 a day because she makes war reasonable to Democrats.
Reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable. She's bringing on all the old guys from the Bush administration who engineered the Iraq War, and because Trump is so terrible, they just have to say something anti-Trump, and it makes it very appetizing to Democratic voters because they said they don't like Trump. But what are they doing? They're rationalizing war. So anyway, that's a convoluted story, but I think that's how it works from my research, and somebody can tell me differently.
I mean, you can see the paper trail.
There's a paper trail. So what is the stock market? The stock market is gambling, and what they gamble in, they're taking money from you and people who have like car insurance.
Not for me.
They are.
Car insurance, right, yeah.
Car
right.
insurance. They're
Right.
taking your money, and they're mobilizing market forces.
Right.
That affect your life.
So I've heard people talk about market forces as a good thing.
Of course, you were raised fundamentalist Christian. Free market.
We need there to be market forces.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Economic system. Market forces are good within a certain system. Capitalism.
Huh.
Market forces are just, it's you could say supply and demand.
Okay, I know supply and demand.
So if you create an artificial demand for arms,
Right.
the supply will come.
So let's take this out of war. Let's
Okay.
just talk about television advertising.
All right.
You make something popular on TV that's not actually popular yet, but you make it look popular in a bunch of ads for a week or two.
The Frisbee.
And then people want to buy it,
Yeah.
even because they're thinking it's popular.
Yeah.
That's a market force.
Or it looks like fun.
That's artificial demand.
That's
the media.
selling things to people that they don't need.
The media has made people think that they want frisbees,
Yes.
even
Look
though
how much fun those people on the commercial were having.
right, even though they weren't thinking they wanted a frisbee beforehand. It's not actually demand because you don't actually need a frisbee to be alive.
But the parent goes, those kids are having fun outside, and this will get my kids out of my damn house.
Right. I will buy them a
I
frisbee.
will buy them a Frisbee.
Even though they already have chalk and a bubble machine and a bicycle.
Yeah.
So does that mean advertising are the bad guys?
I think advertising and marketing are the dark arts. It's about psychology. It's about manipulating perspective. It's about manipulating, creating want where there is no need.
So people don't need to subscribe to our Patreon.
No.
But I have attempted to create a
want.
want by writing a really funny Patreon.
Right.
I spent a lot of time writing hilarious content
Right.
in the hopes of making people feel like their lives might be better if they subscribe to our exclusive Patreon content.
That's marketing.
No! Why can't everything just be black and white packaging and people just buy what they need?
If you get outside of good and evil, magic is not good or evil.
Right.
It can be used for good or evil.
So-
Marketing is not good or evil. Marketing can be used for good. Like the market, like when people said flatten the curve, and 1,000 memes came out that said try not to kill your grandma.
Right.
And people were like, that makes sense to me.
I don't want to kill my grandma.
That is a form of marketing.
Right.
They created an image that people said that makes sense to me.
Uh-huh.
So some people could say, wow, somebody helped me not kill my grandma. Other people could say, oh my God, they're tools of the police state, and now everybody's willing to go into their house and not go outside while
they're
the
gonna
UFOs
enact
fly
martial
over.
law.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this briefly in our prep work for the show, and in spite of the mango and the bathroom breaks, we do actually do prep work, which is that it's not that you're not under the influence of magic, it's that you can be aware that you are being influenced or not aware that you are being influenced. We don't get to choose to not be influenced because we're surrounded by advertising. Maybe somebody that farms rice in Japan and never reads the TV or watches TV, reads the newspaper, or listens to the radio is not being influenced, right?
Right.
So maybe that person's not being influenced, but most people in the modern planet are being influenced, and we don't get to choose to not be. You drive down the interstate and you see a bunch of billboards which are attempting to influence you. And you might see something and think, oh yeah, I really do want to try Crown Apple. Or you might see the billboard and be like, that sounds disgusting. I wish they would stop shoving Crown Apple in my face, which is usually what I'm thinking, because Crown Apple is gross. And that's certifiable fact. But you can become aware of the ways you're being influenced. I coined a phrase on a previous Post-Orthodoxy show about being led around by the nose of your identities. You identify perhaps as a father, as a business owner, as a white person, as a poor person, as there are various things you can identify as. You could identify as a Christian. You might be identifying as an American. Or you might be living in the US but not really identify as an American. So when people start talking super patriotic things, it doesn't really influence you at all. Anything that you identify with, anything that you give yourself the name of, you are enabling people to influence you through that identity that you've chosen. So this is why motherhood is so difficult right now in the US, because people are constantly trying to influence women through the idea of motherhood.
Are you a good mother?
Are you a good mother or not?
Is that what a good mother would do?
When are you going to be a mother? Why aren't you a mother yet? Why did you decide to be a mother instead of pursuing a career? And so there's this mother identity, just like there can be should a good Christian do that? How can you call yourself a Christian in this day and age when Trump says he's a Christian? If you're a Christian, why don't you donate more to charities? These are identities that we can be influenced through, and really it's just best to take some time while we're in quarantine and get to know yourself. Identify which thoughts you have are actually thoughts you have invented and discovered for yourself or proven to be true for yourself. Ask yourself why at the end of every question that you think is the final point of a discussion, and figure out where you're being influenced, which identities you're being influenced through, and see if you are free to make your own choices, or if maybe there's something that's tugging at your heartstrings a little bit too much. And are you okay with that? That's my story.
Very good.
About the dark arts of advertising.
Yeah, I think it's the dark arts. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just spent a lot of time on TV. You didn't have TV.
I know.
I had TV. So like I grew up in the 80s in the lifestyles of the rich and famous era, where everything is about wealth accumulation and that is status. And that's going to depend whether or not you're going to have good sex or not, is how much money you have.
Right. I saw a really great meme that was a picture in the post-apocalyptic near future where young men trying to get a mate are wearing these elaborate wigs made out of toilet paper rolls. Right. And it's like they're showing their hunter-gatherer skills off, because that has become the new thing that you want to prove to a woman that you can do. Everything is all about, how do I get sex? I get sex by proving to a woman I can provide her with enough toilet paper rolls.
So like in previous eras, sexiness was really the sole province of the women. It was like women need to attract a mate.
But the male animals have always been the prettiest.
Well, the males, that's in human thing. Our ability is to feather the nest, like the bowerbird. We have to have a lot of money, and if we have a lot of money, we can pick from the best looking chicks. That was the way it was to a point until the 80s happened.
Oh.
And then suddenly the guys had to be good looking. That's why the rise of the gyms occurred. Because suddenly
the guys couldn't just be good providers. They also had to be aesthetically appealing. I always wondered why dudes looked so weird in movies in like the 50s and the 60s. I'm like,
they didn't have to be sexy.
Why is anybody marrying this guy? He wears his pants up here.
They had to be cool. They had to be cool or calm. They had to act like they knew what was going on or have a lot of money. And then the 80s came along, and guys needed to have some sex appeal. You needed to have some muscles.
Why do you think that happened?
Products. It
didn't actually happen because women actually needed men to look sexy. It happened because people weren't buying enough things.
Right.
And so we invented,
like the Frisbee,
a demand that made, like they did with shaving for women. You know who's not buying razors? Women.
Well,
maybe we should make the women think that other women are shaving, so that they'll all start buying razors.
You know what the pink tax is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the pink tax is they'll sell you the same thing they'll sell to dudes, but for more because it's pink, because it's for women.
Right. Which is true.
That's what they did in the 80s with guys. Is it was their own version. It was the blue tax, which is like hair products for men. It used to just be like Vaseline or Brill cream or something, right? That was it.
Something to keep it down so you don't look like an animal.
Old Spice and Brill cream was all you needed. And then suddenly it was like you needed hair gels, and you needed, as a guy, you needed to have a hair dryer. And then you needed to have a beard trimmer. Not just like...
And a nose hair trimmer.
And a nose hair trimmer. Like, and it became about the clothes for dudes. Like, everything changed in the 80s where guys had... they started to share the burden of sexual attractiveness. because trickle down economics wasn't giving them enough money. So they needed to do something else to feather the nest, and that was buy products.
Right. Yeah, how many things do you do because you think you need to do it? How much money do you spend because you think you have to spend that money? Astrid says, is it perhaps a global backlash? My younger friends have a tougher image to live up to as mothers than I had in the 90s.
Oh, I have 2 children, and I watched the mothers go through a hellish social trial because they weren't necessarily planning on being mothers. They weren't in a place where they felt like I'm ready to be another. I had not feathered the nest, enough. So they're like, we can just do this thing now. So then it became about, am I a good mother? Was the mantra of the new mothers of the 80s and the 90s.
Ugh.
Am I a good
just
mother?
Being a mother and having other women supporting you in.
So rather than seeing how you're connecting with your child, that's not important.
That's not how you know you're a good mother.
What is important is how they think about me connecting with my child, how they think I am doing as a mother with my child.
So it's not whether or not I feel that my child is sexually healthy because I use correct anatomical terms with them so that they know how to describe themselves. It's actually that am I saying the words to my child that other mommies think are appropriate to say to my child?
You're putting your baby in a stroller. You should have her in a sling. The baby shouldn't be that far apart from the body. You're putting your baby in her own thing. You're doing this. What are you feeding your baby? Like everything every choice you have as a mother becomes a test of whether or not you can be in the woman club or not. And it's already enough that you're not a woman until you've had a kid. But then, okay, now I'm having a kid. That just ramps up.
Yeah.
It's not that, oh, well, you had a kid, but how are you having your kid?
You're not baby wearing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're having a C-section. It's too bad you weren't able to have her the real way.
That kid is never going to have the same relationship with you that my kid did. Like, no, it's not enough. It just ramps up. So, like, now you're a mom, so you should be in the mom club, but no, there's dues to pay.
Right.
And those dues are social. And that has to do with marketing. And anti-marketing can be just as bad as marketing. So you market to the mothers, everybody, you need to have that baby weaned by 3 months so you can be a working mom and not be dictated who you are because now you're a mom. You can still be you can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan and never let him forget he's the man. You can do that whole 80s nonsense around doing both jobs for half the pay. You can be a mom and successful.
Getting it all done.
So it's not enough just to be a mom. Now you have to go through the gauntlet of all the marketing of mainstreamity.
Yeah.
Of like, what kind of mom are you? Oh, I see you have that product on your shelf. Maybe my kid shouldn't come here anymore.
Ooh.
It's real.
What does that have to do with the economy?
Everything. Fear drives the economy. If you think you're a bad mom, you will do everything you can.
I think that would be a really fun exercise. I'm sure people are watching more television and seeing more ads on their YouTubes and Netflix and whatever these days while we're in quarantine. Pay attention to the ads that are trying to get you to buy something. Are they trying to get you to buy something by making you feel good about what you're already doing? Or are they trying to get you to buy something by making you feel like you would be better if you did something else? What is this ad telling me about myself? This ad is telling me I won't be as cool of a filmmaker unless I'm using the new iPhone to make my movies.
Yeah.
Astrid says, my younger friends feel bad if they do a full workday and need to pick up the kids earlier. There was a really fantastic comic series by a French artist who also wrote them in English about the difference between how society reacts to a mom versus to a dad. You know, so the dad says, I'm cutting off work early to go pick up my kid from school. Everybody's like, oh, that's so sweet. He's such a good dad. Look at him picking up the slack. And the mom cuts off work early. She's like, I have to leave work early to go pick up the kid from school. And they're like, how do you expect to maintain a job like this?
Mm-hmm.
You have commitments.
Right.
So that's something worth
Well,
observing.
you know, when you live in a country that is not dominated by Judeo-Christian values, you still live in a world that looks to a country that is. When I lived in Los Angeles, I realized that it was the lighthouse for a lot of the planet. People look to Los Angeles, the products that come out of Los Angeles to dictate culture and what is to be aspired to or not aspired to. And so even if you live in a secular country that doesn't care about Jesus, so much of the media is being dictated by a religious country that encodes that in their marketing.
Right.
And their advertising.
You might not call yourself a Christian, or you might actually be one of those Christians that is pro-choice, pro-marriage freedom.
Doesn't care if you're gay.
Doesn't care if you're gay,
Yeah.
and still be influenced by conservative Christian principles because it's everywhere. It's in your hospitals. It's in the news. It's in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
There are distorted biblical principles everywhere in the U.S. right now.
And it's not just the U.S., because that's what so many people in other places look for. And it's not so much now. I think for a point, we were the beacon on the hill for a lot of people because of the image that America presented. The reality has cracked through the image for a lot of countries. Mm-hmm. South America, Central America sees America differently than America does because of our interactions in those countries, in those regions, mm-hmm. over the last 50 years. So there is a skepticism that is healthy, and I think is required, that has not crept back to the state yet. If you start to criticize what's going on with our monetary policy, with our cultural policy, then you're anti-American. Why don't you just leave the country?
Right.
You'll get that if you're embedded in the culture of this place. So the rest of the world was following us and then stopped following us, if you want to use a Facebook metaphor. Like they're like, yeah, I'm tired of all the spam
we
coming
can be friends,
from there.
But
Yeah,
I'm going to snooze you for 30 days.
I'm going to snooze you for 30 days. We've been getting snoozed for 30 days for like 30 years. Slowly and more increasingly.
Right. And I mean,
yeah.
you have to look at what kind of fruit is the tree bearing? What kind of fruit is the tree bearing?
Yeah.
Our response to the coronavirus has been deplorable and archaic. And other countries on the planet have done a much better job than we have. We're not the best. And we have to acknowledge that we're not the best in order to realize our real place in the playground of the planet and start working together with the other kids better.
So that's what the Chiron brings.
So we have...
Kairos, sorry.
We have about 8 minutes left.
We're going to stick to regular radio standards. We're going to have to cut out some of this broadcast
to add in a song or two.
We'll add in a song or two. Appreciate everybody who's been tuning into our Facebook live stream.
Yeah.
Our Twitch live stream, our YouTube live stream.
We're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
4 to 6, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday.
Ainsley is the person who can actually look at the comments, respond to the comments, and still be a part of the dialogue.
Never let him forget he's a man.
I am not that person. I tend to just look at it all afterwards.
Yeah, which we do, and we love it. If you keep commenting or you have other links to share, please let us know. I'm going to share some links here at the end of the live stream that Lynn shared with us towards the beginning.
Oh, good.
I'm going to be looking into those links and researching them myself. And usually what we do is each show we kind of do a throwback. Astra says, I think we lost everyone else. Yeah, there are only about 5 people watching right now. We had about 14 there at the peak, and that was really great.
That's all we need is those 5.
And Astrid, because it's so nice to have foreign correspondents like Astrid and Mokai who give us perspectives from other countries. Like Astrid has literally had to say, you guys do realize there are other countries that think differently than the U.S. does. We
appreciate being reminded of that, so we talk differently. Because I tend to talk to Butte first, America second, and the world third.
Okay.
as more people start commenting, then the way that we talk will change according to the audience that we're talking to.
Yeah.
At least that's what I think for myself.
Totally.
So I appreciate everybody that tuned in. This is this. Usually we have a 1 hour show on Thursday. We started an hour earlier than normal.
And which we're going to continue to do when the radio station pipes back up again, because we can broadcast in the station live to our Facebook audience for the first hour and then go on to the radio for the second hour.
Exactly. So this show will be edited with some nice snappy intro, outro, and
our goal for this week is to get
Sunday.
the podcast.
So
we're going to do it. We're going to do it, right?
These are all being turned into podcasts, which means the podcast host that we're using will not let us upload podcasts out of chronological order.
So we have to start with the very first one from like August.
So from August 2019, we will start uploading our podcast and hopefully quickly move into our current podcast so that the current ones are uploaded. If you're listening now, you're privy to history that is not, won't find our way to our podcast page for some time.
For how long, Dark?
For some time. Some
Are you
time.
gonna set yourself a goal of how many podcasts?
I'll tell you what, like,
and then we can edit one every day.
I'm trying
Like
not to
5 a
say
week.
things that are gonna
Bite you later.
They're gonna mess with our public radio broadcast.
Well, we have to edit the heck out of this show anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out, Greg and Astrid and everybody else and the lurkers that didn't say very much. We appreciate you guys.
Greg, who's Greg?
Greg Henley.
Oh, Greg,
yeah!
right on. Greg was on the show.
Yeah, man. So we're gonna sign off here and go and do a bunch of editing. And we appreciate you guys following us on Instagram and at least read my Patreon because it's really funny. I put a lot of work into it, even if
Did
you
you
don't.
put a link to the Patreon?
Yeah, I put a bunch of links in there at the
Oh,
end.
good.
Yeah.
All right, we did it. Now we can get back to our lives, which is basically doing stuff to have a better show next Sunday.
Yay!
Yeah, thanks for playing.
If you haven't already liked KBMF on Facebook, take a minute and go like KBMF because we're going to be around making quality radio for the peeps for a while to come. And we really appreciate the support of the followers online. I guess that's the end. We'll just add some other stuff. I guess we just have to end, guys.
Yeah.
So we love you.
Well, we
miss
can
you,
pretend to end.
And then just eat mangoes and chat.
And just eat mangoes and
stop
chat.
talking to people?
Yeah, because that will all get packaged into a KBMF show.
All right.
And then everything that happens afterwards is an incentive for people to subscribe to our Patreon.
Which we can't say on the radio.
If it's interesting.
I think we just have to stop. We have to stop while we're ahead.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. If you want to have secret, weirder conversations with us later, I guess.
We're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, the nittier, the grittier, the better.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
We love you.